Welcome to a football show, Thursday edition, brought to you by Sinkers Beverages and the Kingston Group. That is Zach Lyons. I am Braden Gall, and it is great to have you here. So if you want to jump into the comments, we will take those comments and those questions all show long, like we do each and every show. Give us a thumbs up on the YouTube page. Go ahead and give us a share on Facebook and Twitter if you're watching there, and we'll get some folks in to the show, invite some folks in. Zach, good to see you, man. How are you, sir? Still riding that high off last night, I see?
The haters high has not left the building.
No, it was in the timeline all morning. And by the way, if you would like to listen to more Zach Lyons, make sure you check out Lamestream Sports on Friday morning. Zach was kind enough to join me and Steve Cavendish, and he began the interview by talking about Kendrick Lamar. So if you want to check that out, but it's more about your background and sort of your history, how F-Words got started, and sort of the stuff you're doing now with 104.5. So good stuff on it was Tuesday, right? Good stuff with you and Blaine on Tuesday. So
for those listening or with us live, I'll be there tomorrow, 1 to 3 with Blaine, and there you go, man.
It's awesome. I thought you did a great job, and I think you should be very proud. So if you want to learn more about Zach's background and sort of the journey he's been on, make sure you check out Lamestream Sports everywhere you get your podcasts. I will have a video version of that interview up for you guys over the weekend, so make sure you stay tuned of that as well. Yes, Stoney, 5 days of Zach Lyons on the airwaves. That's right, because you went a football show, 104.5, football and other F words, a football show, 104.5. Not a bad week for you. Not a bad week.
And it's all at 1 p.m., so that was even better. It's all at the same time.
Look, it's important to build muscle memory and reps. So it's important to have that sort of consistency there, just like every good young player. All right, so Sinkers Beverages. Well, today on the show, I'll tell you what we're doing on the show today. We did Jacksonville on Monday. We matched up the Titans and the Jags, sort of position group versus position group, sort of like the games inside the game. Talked a lot about the Trevor Lawrence contract, so if you want to go take a listen to that one, we've got one for you there. We're going to do the Colts on Monday, and today we're going to talk about the defending division champion, the Houston Texans. Can they repeat what they did last year? They're sort of pushing all their chips into the table. The Vegas odds say it's all about the Houston Texans. Is it the right strategy? We'll see how they match up with the Tennessee Titans, with a few Tennessee Titans on their roster now. So we'll get into that, and we'll kind of match up the Titans with the Texans and talk through what we expect from the Houston organization in 2024, kind of get you primed for the summer camps that are coming up as well. But before we do that, let's talk Sinkers Beverages and the Kingston Group. First, sign up for their loyalty programs. I can't stress this enough, Zach. If you're at Bluegrass Beverages in Hendersonville, their sister store, proud sponsor of football and other F-words, make sure you sign up for the Bob program, the B-O-B, the best of Bluegrass. There's going to be some events that are private, that are only for loyalty customers. There's going to be offerings at both stores that are going to be only for loyalty customers. You have to be signed up for those two groups, B-O-B at Bluegrass and, of course, the in-crowd at Sinkers Beverages in East Nashville, if you want to get access to some of those events. Last summer, of course, we had the big bourbon. We had a beer fest that you and Stoney were at. We had the bourbon one that I was at. There's a tequila one as well. So all kinds of fun stuff planned over the course of the next 6 months. Make sure you're signed up for those programs. In crowd for Sinkers, B-O-B, the Bob program for Bluegrass, and Kingston Group, buildkg.com. Of course, obviously that's the name you need to know. If you're buying or selling a house, talk to them. Get some advice on the house. If you're buying a house, see if you need to remodel the house, if you need to renovate the house, make sure you talk to the Kingston Group. They are the best in the business at what they do. They're award-winning, and they're locally owned here in Nashville, Tennessee for over a decade, helping you folks in Nashville with your houses. So make sure you check all that out. Okay. I want to ask you broadly first about the Vegas odds in the division. I just want to get your thoughts on this, because we talked on Monday about how almost literally nothing would surprise us inside the AFC South in 2024. Anthony Richardson develops into a superstar. They're great. Colts win the division. I wouldn't pick that, but I wouldn't be shocked if it happened. Anthony Richardson tears an ACL and gets hurt, and they are terrible, and they're not great, and they finish 4th place. Not predicting that, but wouldn't be surprised if that happened. The odds right now, though, Houston plus 105 to win the division. Jacksonville plus 275 to win the division. Indianapolis plus 310 to win the division. Okay, nothing out of the ordinary there. Tennessee Titans plus 1,000. Not even close according to the Vegas odds, which has more to do with the betting public than it does their actual ability. But I just wanted to get your thoughts in general on that order right there as of June 20th.
I think that the Colts are a sneaky good bet. Like if you wanted, if I was saying only got $5, which team am I going to put it on? It's going to be the Colts because I think that's just a good return. Like if for $5, that's a good return. If
Good
you
value.
want, I think the Texans at plus money is very good value, but you're not going to get a lot of return off of it. But money's money, right? You'll have more money than what you bet. Jacksonville, I think, is the worst odds of the three because I think plus 275 is way too low. Or too favorable, I guess is the better word, is too favorable for the Jaguars. And I think, again, I think the Titans are plus 1,000 is too bad of odds, I think, but I still would have them as the fourth.
Agree.
With the in those odds. So, but I just think plus 1,000 is a little disrespectful.
I was kind of shocked by that, honestly. Like, you can say that they're fourth place. I think you and I both agree with that. You can say that they're the fourth. You know, again, Vegas is about the gambling public, not about the actual football. So everybody knows that. But like plus 500, if you'd have told me plus 500, you know, I think lumping Jacksonville, Indianapolis, and the Titans sort of all kind of bang, bang, bang in order. I'm okay with. The 1,000 makes me almost nervous about the team. Like, that's like, what does Vegas know that we don't know that has them so bad? Because I've seen some mock drafts having the Titans picking in the top 5, taking a quarterback, which is like, again, also seems insane to me as well.
I think this ties into something that I've been kind of having in my back pocket, and if there hasn't been a good time to really put it out there, but there's this narrative, right? That obviously Vegas odds don't like us. Mock drafts don't like us. We get a lot of, for the most part, the majority of the offseason grades have not been kind to the Tennessee Titans. A lot of people have not liked the Tennessee Titans offseason. Now, there's this narrative out there, though, that gets batted around on the radio waves. Well, the team that won the offseason hardly wins the regular season, right? But the Tennessee Titans are not the team that, and they use this to say, well, put the Tennessee Titans, get that, down low. They've had a great offseason, this tremendous offseason. They are going to be probably worse than what people expect. The difference is, and generally that is true, but it's the team that the media, by and large, dubs as the winner does really bad in the regular season. And this has been quite the opposite. The national media has constantly, for the most part, I'd say 90%, constantly shit on the Tennessee Titans, have constantly crapped all over their strategy, have crapped all over their moves. Oh, Calvin Ridley, overpay. You spent how much for a center? Even though he's the best center, but you spent how much? You trade for L'Jarius Sneed, and, you fired Mike Vrabel. They have constantly shit on the Tennessee Titans. So this idea, and these odds play into that too, this idea that the Titans won the offseason, and because they won the offseason, they're going to lose, is technically not true. Now, Titans media, I think, has a little bit more realistic approach. This has been a great offseason. We'll have to wait and see how it plays out, but this has been a great offseason. But if you were to poll, and look at all the offseason grades, it has not been kind to the Tennessee Titans. In fact, Robert Mays was just on the Athletic Football Show, just confounded and lost about the offseason strategy for the Tennessee Titans. So this is not the same as when the Browns or the Jaguars are dubbed offseason winners and put together a lackluster performance in the regular season because the national media dubbed them kings of the offseason champions.
Yeah.
Nobody is crowning the Tennessee Titans offseason champion. So I think that narrative it's the wrong talking point to use when discussing the Tennessee Titans.
I tend to agree with you on the whole. I just because I'm going to be anecdotal here and pick and choose one that ESPN just posted. They had Jacksonville's offseason as a C+. They had Houston's as a B-, and they had Tennessee's as a B. So they actually graded Tennessee's offseason.
That was the
better.
Only place that has really given us, and that's just one guy, right?
That's just one guy, yeah. And but
look at all the other 30 ESPN writers.
Yeah, well, exactly. Indianapolis, they gave a B+. Again, for whatever it's worth. I actually kind of disagree with their take on Houston, to be honest, as a part of our conversation today. I think the right moves. Houston is trying to go for it right now with a rookie quarterback contract, and we could debate Stephon Diggs' price point or Joe Mixon's contract, but at the end of the day, I think they're putting as many high-level elite athletes around CJ Stroud as possible to try to win now, and I think that's the right strategy for them because they have an opportunity. And so again, like I would grade the Texans just as high as the Titans. Here's the difference though. I want to ask you this question because I think there's a good question from Glory Day about, is this more of a testament of what the media thinks about Callahan, Levis, or both? And I would say it's all encompassing. Small market mixed with an unproven quarterback and a first-year coach. Nobody really knows what to think of that. So it's just hard to grade in general, except for like the super uber insider guys that do some stuff. I think there's a difference between the team that wins the in this case, wins the offseason and spends the most in free agency. And I think those are two different things technically. And generally, you could say the team that spends the most in free agency those don't translate to wins necessarily. That's different than saying the team that quote unquote won the offseason. Because I agree with you. No one is saying that the Titans are the best offseason team. Like they might be graded higher than some other team in the division, but like randomly, no one is saying that they're the best team in the offseason. But they did spend the most by and large. And so those are two different things, and they both could be.
I agree,
true.
but the national media doesn't separate them.
Yeah.
Because usually the people who won the offseason are the Browns or Jaguars, right? Every year the Browns or Jaguars have typically won the offseason because they've spent the most, and they've gotten all these players under contract, and they're going to be all fresh and hip. And for the most part, that has proven to be an unwise decision because they're spending a lot of money on bad players. Tennessee Titans are spending a lot of money on good players. But I do agree that there is a difference, just that the national media does not make that distinction.
Yeah, I agree with that. And D Good says, by the way, can we talk about how great Zach was on 104.5 the other day? So there you go. There you go. I heard all your people. I saw all your people invade the chat, so I appreciated that. I was
do it again tomorrow. Got to repeat.
You did a great job. So I just wanted to start with, because I think honestly the most important question at a 10,000-foot view for the Houston Texans is just like, they don't lose a coordinator, they keep their coach, the quarterback's in year 2, they go out and add some pieces. So much of the NFL is like, oh, we all think X, and then X doesn't happen. And literally everyone is going to pick the Houston Texans to win the division. It's going to be a unanimous thing, like across all websites, all levels of information. And I'm just like, what has to happen other than a CJ Stroud injury? Like injuries are sort of not a part of this because injuries are impossible to predict and they could affect every team. But like, what's the thing that would cause the Texans not to repeat as division champs? Like, why wouldn't Bobby Slowick and CJ Stroud be better in year 2 with better receivers and better running backs around him? Why not? I struggle to find the answer to that.
Well, I guess there could be more of it's a lightning in the bottle syndrome for last year. Maybe CJ Stroud and Bobby Slowick were never as good as what that was. So get to what Bo just said. It's parity, right? Parity comes for everybody at some point, and this is a time where I look at the Texans and I go, okay, they've improved their defense more than they've really improved their offense. Now, listen, Stephon Diggs is an upgrade over Robert Woods, and stuff like that. But
it's hot. It's a spicy take there.
Yeah, exactly. But like, it's not. You're not getting, theoretically, Stephon Diggs has been on the decline right now. Whether that's because the people want to blame the offensive coordinator in Buffalo, his usage, whatever. He has not been the elite wide receiver one that was thrown up into the names of all these other players. He's getting paid like it, but there's a reason why Buffalo was like, okay, we'll just go ahead and let you go because you're a malcontent and you're not getting paid a whole lot. And what's going to happen when he's not getting the targets here? I look at their interior offensive line. It's really bad. They got great tackles, but this interior offensive line is not that good. You got Shaq Mason, but your center is very, very suspect. And Kenyon Green is coming off a season-ending injury last year, so he didn't even play at all last year. right? So we know how that affects a player. We've seen it firsthand here. So if you're looking at it, I would say it's going to fall onto the offense. I don't think there's going to be a defensive issue, and we'll talk about that when we get into all these matchups and everything.
Yeah.
But with D'Amico Ryans and the defensive personnel that they have, it's not going to really be because they're getting blown out, right?
Dude, the number of
It's
5
going to be
stars.
because they can't score enough. And there is I know everybody wants to crown Bobby Sloak the genius and all this kind of stuff, but there could be some year 2 growing pains that maybe everybody else around them is taking a bigger leap, and then the increase in competition because of schedule, and they kind of stay a little stagnant on offense. If they stay stagnant on offense, that is really going to be the deciding factor of what this team can be. I don't know. I'm very they are better than the Titans in a lot of areas. We'll get into it. They win a lot of matchups.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's really I think more of a concern of what they do against the other teams than it is against the Titans as far as their outlook in general.
Yeah, I think you're sort of like dancing around all of this, but like if you don't evolve and the league now has a year of film on you, you're going to go one of 2 ways. Either all the defensive coordinators who make millions of dollars to design a plan to stop what you do well, they're going to figure you out now that they've seen you for a year and they've got a year of film on you. Or you're so good that you can evolve and you can show something last year and then work off of it this year. And you can only go, like, if you're great, you're Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes, you can evolve in advance. If you're not, you can pop up one year and then you kind of just flatline and people figure you out and they know what your tells are and they know how to stop this thing or that thing. So I agree. Now, the supporting cast, though, I'm with you on the interior offensive line. We can discuss that in a second, but I'm not sure I can, like, I'm personally, John Mechie and Xavier Hutchinson are not even factors on this team. And those are like 2 players that I think would be very good Tennessee Titans. Like, I think if they were healthy,
yeah,
like they're both better than Nick Westbrook-Akine, for example, in my opinion. So like, it's just,
I don't think Xavier Hutchinson is currently. Now, maybe he turns into something and what he was supposed to be coming out of college, but there's a reason he got drafted where he got drafted, and there's a reason he was a complete
he's slow
last year.
He's slow.
Yeah.
But
I think NWI could beat him in a foot race, and I don't like NWI. So that should tell you right there.
But Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell, Noah Brown, John Mechie, Xavier Hutchinson is as good a 1 through 6 as you're going to find anywhere in the NFL. They re-signed Dalton Schultz. You go get Joe Mixon, and Dameon Pierce is still there, so you got a pretty good 1-2. Like, aging. You
got like a 2-3 there.
And I don't love the contract necessarily. Like, we can debate some of the but like this 2024, it is hard to find, other than tougher schedule and the NFL now sees you on tape. Other than those 2 things, it is hard to find a reason why this is not a team that will win the AFC South. And a lot of times what happens in my brain when I feel that way about something, that's the red alert sign. You know, you're like, okay, wait a second. Why is it that I don't have any questions about this? And that's when I get concerned.
Well, and that I get that completely, because it would be really hard pressed for me to sit here and say I'd be lying if I sat here and said, well, the Tennessee Titans are going to win this division. The Colts are
right.
Right. No, the Texans are the clear favorites. In fact, that's why I'm a little surprised they're just plus 105, to be honest with you.
Agreed.
I think that's a little crazy. I may be placing a little bet on that today, but I do think I look at it and I go, Tank Dell, Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins. That's a really tough top 3 to beat. And I like what Noah Brown can do behind there. And we haven't even talked about Robert Woods is still on the team. They also went and got Ben Skoranek, which I know people really don't know much about Ben Skoranek, but if you're a fantasy football player, you some Ben Skoranek from his LA football days.
You gotta stream him there. You gotta stream him for sure.
Yeah. To me, I look at it and I go, they have weaknesses. They have like average players, but if this offensive line protects CJ Stroud, it's going to be really hard to stop the offense. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter if they would have just rolled out Nico Collins, Robert Woods, and Tank Dell. Like, even without Stephon Diggs, it's still a really hard offense to stop. Now, you got concerns, right? You got Tank Dell, who got shot in the leg after coming back from injury. And listen, he may look good. He may not look good. Again, when you come back from injury, there's just, depending on the severity of injury, there's a little bit of time there. I mean, does he still have the same speed and twitch after getting hurt? Can he stay healthy? Can Titus Howard really keep it going like he's been going? You have no issues with Laramie Tunsil, but there's questions of ifs. Like, is Nico Collins truly a number one wide receiver? I say yes. I really like Nico Collins coming out of the draft. But there is a level of objectivity we kind of have to do, take a step back and say, is Nico Collins the truth? Like, it's kind of like, I believe in Will Levis. Do we really think that Will Levis can be great? Like 100%. And that's where it's kind of at with a lot of these guys. The questions I just don't have any questions about is their defense. And so that's where it's kind of like, to me, it's like, I look at it and I go, it's not about, are you getting your butt whooped and getting scored on? It's really more about, can you score enough, week to week and keep them and maintain some consistency. But I do believe that they can.
They have it. There is a good chance that they're going to have 10 first-round picks on their opening week roster and 10 second-round picks. There's a chance that almost half of the roster is first and second-round picks, and that is an alarming number. Because some of the and it's not to say that some of these guys aren't like retreads that got thrown off somewhere else. They did. Jeff Okudah, by the way, is one of them. He's a depth piece for them now. Derek Barnett, a depth piece for them right now. But 10 first-round picks and 10 second-round picks is a lot of what we would call pedigree, talent on the roster. And that's a large number. And then even then you go down the list, and like a guy like Henry Toto, that's a 5-star player whose athletic ability was never in question. He's like a 5th-round pick. He's a 5th-round pick. So they have a talent level that is different than a lot of other teams. The question is, can they maximize it? Can they push all the chips in on a must-win season or two and actually go and execute? And that's a big deal. That's why we play the games, and that's what makes the game and the NFL so great. All right. Sinkers Beverages, Kingston Group. Make sure you check out our 2 great local sponsors, stackingtheinbox.com, football and other efforts. Bluegrass Beverages up in Hendersonville. I think I got it all. Where do you want to start here? You want to start where the Titans are strongest at wide receiver and corner and do those 2 matchups?
Yeah, I think that they still have the advantage at both those positions. I still give them the win because I do think that with pressing, Stephon Diggs really is going to be fed up with like L'Jarius Sneed and Cheeto, right? Stephon Diggs has not traditionally performed well against either of those corners as well. Nico Collins, he's really good, but I think L'Jarius Sneed is better. Maybe he takes a big leap, but right now I'm just going off what we've seen on the field. I still give that to the edge. And I will say that where they do win is probably Tank Dell versus Roger McCreary. But again, if you're jamming him up at the line and you're generating pressure up the middle, that should still be a even matchup for those 2 guys. So I would say as a whole, the cornerback room for the wide receivers versus the Titans cornerback room edges out the Texans wide receivers, not by a lot, but I would say that I'm very confident in that. On the flip side,
well, let's stay there first, and then we'll go, because I want to stay with that matchup, because I think this is one of the most interesting matchups in the entire division, honestly, because I think you could argue, assuming L'Jarius Sneed comes back fully healthy, I think they're like a wash with Nico Collins. No. I mean, I'm just saying he plays the same level, the same way Nico Collins plays, right? Like, they just play their same level. I think they are pretty evenly matched as like your cornerback 1, your wide receiver 1. You're probably not the number 1 guy in the NFL, but you're pretty damn close. Like, you're both pretty, I would say that's pretty even. I would take Diggs over Awuzie if he's Diggs. If he's declining and he takes a step back in his physical abilities, then I think it's more of an even match. I would take Tank Dell slightly over McCreary. And then if you go further and you go 4th receiver, 5th receiver, 6th receiver, you start to lean towards the Texans. Is that not is it not more even? Like, I don't think they win those first two matchups the way you're saying. I think they lose one of those two matchups. They might win one, but I think they lose one of those two first matchups.
I was seeing if I still have what Diggs did against Cheeto.
Because Diggs got shut down by Diggs got shut down by Snead.
Yeah, well, Cheeto's done really well against Diggs when I was looking at it. I can't seem to find it, but Cheeto did really well against Diggs as well. So I'm not. I think what it is that it's the pressing, like the way that they are deploying the cornerbacks, where they just are pressing constantly. That really neutralizes what some of these guys can do. Not really Nico Collins, but Diggs and Tank Dell. But but the pressing has to be a part of it. So that's kind of where I look at it. And I'm really just looking at the top three. But if you really wanted to get down to it, I like Noah Brown probably is better than any of the backup cornerbacks, but everybody else, I would say they're probably on even ground. So like Noah Brown kind of gives you an edge, but it's not a tremendous edge where I'm going to think, because you're shutting down essentially Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs. I feel like if you're shutting them down, these other guys aren't really going to hurt you as much. So I feel like that battle in my mind wins a whole lot. Then I'm really worried about the depth of these, like Tiny Johnson III and Ben Skoranek and those other guys.
Basically, I am trying to find a tiebreaker here, right?
Yeah.
Like that's kind of what I'm trying to find. And if the tiebreaker is number 4 versus number 4, I do give the edge to the Texans in this matchup. But I do ultimately, the most important point is how many teams in the NFL can line up against this offense and feel pretty comfortable about manning up and rolling up on press coverage against these receivers and CJ Stroud. And there's just not many. And so if you're a Titans fan, that's something to be excited about. It doesn't mean they're going to win every matchup. It doesn't mean they're better than the Texans. But I think there's very few teams that you can say, all right, let's go, boys. Let's go play some reps here and let's see how many reps we can win. And I think the Titans can win some of those. But I do think if you're giving me a tiebreaker, I would take the Texans in that matchup. Now, let's go to the other side. You got Desmond King, Derek Stingley. They went and drafted Kamari Lassiter. That's sort of their top 3 corners right now in that sense. Derek Stingley, from an athletic standpoint, is an elite player. He just hasn't yet quite grown into it, but I think he probably will. I actually might lean Titans here. If I had to,
I don't think that's insane or anything. If you look at it this way, Derek Stingley is going to be on one of these guys, and maybe they just do zone coverage, but he's not wiping away a Calvin Ridley or DeAndre Hopkins, but he is, whoever he's lined up against, he's making life harder for the quarterback to go in that direction.
Yep.
And then one of those guys is going to be on Kamari Lassiter, who they're absolutely going to put in a blender. It doesn't matter if it's DeAndre Hopkins with his route running vet savvy, or if it's going to be Calvin Ridley with his route running but with speed. They're going to put him in a blender. And Desmond King is fine. I kind of think that the Desmond King, Tyler Boyd is actually one of my favorite matchups. Of this
pretty good
thing. Yeah. But I do think that Tyler Boyd ends up winning out, because that's just what Tyler Boyd does. He just kind of wins. So again, if you kind of went, into the 4th range, if you're looking at Jeff Okudah, then I'd probably say, there you go. Jeff Okudah probably gets the benefit of the doubt over Treylon Burks.
2 former first-round picks.
But I do think that at the end of the day, Kamari Lassiter, I know he's having a really good pajama practice off season so far. But again, if you're going to be up against Calvin Ridley or D-Hop, that's a totally different story on game days than it is going up against people in the pajamas. So
yeah, I think you said it right. I think Stingley wins in one matchup, whoever he plays against. Whoever the rookie plays against, Lassiter, the Titans win that one. So you're split sort of 1-1 at the top of the two best players on both sides. And it doesn't mean that Lassiter doesn't take a big step forward and become a really great player by the end of the year or next year. Maybe he does, and certainly Titans fans don't want that, but there's a good chance that he's pretty good. But it's gonna take some time. And then I think you're right. I think Boyd and King are kind of the same guy, like two kind of like solid players that are good at what they do. They kind of know what they are. They've been around a long time, and it's probably a wash. And then you're right. If I'm looking for a tiebreaker, I probably go Okudah over Burks, but I could absolutely see Burks being good enough by the time they play the Texans to win that matchup in 4 wide situations. Or if they want to take out the slot and make him a slot play, like I could see him starting to win some of those battles. I could also see him being injured and Okudah winning that battle. So the reason I would pick the Titans here is that I think you're guaranteed at least one receiver is going to make plays. And then you probably feel comfortable about Boyd making some plays. And then there's a chance your sort of flex guy, Treylon Burks, makes plays. That's where you go, okay, tiebreaker maybe goes to the Titans. If Burks is not there or Phillips is not healthy or somebody else, then you probably lean Texans. And otherwise, there's not a team in this division that like these two teams at these two positions match up better than anyone else in the division.
Yes, correct.
This is high level stuff on both sides, I think.
It's a bad day to be a cornerback in the AFC South when you face the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah. Or the Texans for that matter. But the Titans have the personnel and the Texans might too. So that's what makes them good in this situation. Okay. Let's go to the pass rush here. This seems like an easy one. Easy one. So let's do the pass rush.
I will say again, I look at it like edge versus tackles, right? I think that the Texans for the tackles win. But if I were talking about up the middle, I still would probably take the Tennessee Titans to win. But here's the thing. As far as defensive for the Tennessee Titans, overall, the Tennessee Titans win in the trenches on both sides. There's just no other way around it.
Wow.
On both sides, the Texans win both sides.
They
win.
You said Titans.
I meant Texans.
Okay. Texans. I was like, whoa.
They obviously win on the defensive side of the ball. The Texans do. And I will give the edge to the offensive line versus this defense. Yes, Jeffrey Simmons could probably feast, and maybe Tavondre Sweat can too. But when you have two really good tackles, it really allows you to get creative on the offensive line. And that's where they're at. And the Tennessee Titans really don't really have that. And when you're looking at Daniil Hunter, Danico Autry, Foley Fatukasi, Will Anderson Jr., I mean, that is that's tough. Gross. And then you got Mario Edwards, Derek Barnett, Tim Settle are the three guys behind them.
It's ridiculous.
Solomon Burr. It's just, to me, I just look at it and I go, they have an embarrassment of riches on the defensive line.
Yep.
And in those trenches, they're just going to dominate. Listen, let me say this. The Texans offensive line may not dominate, but I do think they end up getting more wins. But the Texans defensive line, it would be a coaching nirvana if the Texans defensive line were somehow stopped and stifled by Bill Callahan and the Titans offensive line. Like, that would be one of the best coaching games of the year in my mind.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's there's all of those players are on the team and they left Jonathan Grenard go. Like that. Yeah. It is. You talk about high end. Like, here's the thing: did the Titans pass rushers, Landry, Key, Weaver against Howard and Tunsil? No chance you lose those battles. Houston wins. Could Latham eventually win some battles against Daniil Hunter and Will Anderson? Sure. In fact, I'm sure Latham went against Will Anderson in practice at Alabama. But no chance that fill in the blank right tackle and J.C. Latham are beating Will Anderson and Daniil Hunter right now. Like from a pass rush outside perspective, the Titans lose both matchups. I agree with you. The one area where I can say, all right, I think the Titans can win this matchup is interior offensive line of the Texans versus Simmons and Sweat. That's where I think they can get some push and they can get some movement. But to your point, they can get creative to stop that. I think the other side of that, I don't think we know yet. I mean, I would take Autry over Skoronski. You know what I mean? But I don't think we know exactly how, like, if Cushenberry and Skoronski take major steps and Skoronski's much better, which is possible, then I think you can start to see the interior of the Titans offensive line hold its own against some of those Texans interior. So I think in general, the Titans lose on the outside and are evenly matched or could win on the inside. I think that's sort of a clear way to say it. And then, of course, we can get to the linebackers if you want. So, but I think they lose the trenches for sure.
Yeah, they definitely lose the trenches. And look, I think Henry Toto, what a fuck it.
Toto.
Henry Toto, he's not good. So I don't care that he was a 5-star. He was not good last year. He's not very good. He had a horribly high missed tackle rate. But at the end of the day, Christian Harris is good. And really the surrounding cast around Henry is good. So maybe that just feeds off. And their safeties are phenomenal. Jimmy Ward and Jalen Petrie are really, really good. They win that battle. Even with Henry Henry T, even with him on the field, they win that battle against the tight ends and the running backs. Now, I do think it's a lot closer because I think Tyjae Spears and Tony Pollard do provide you some dynamic playmakers of both the run and the passing game, where maybe Christian Harris and Henry, and hell, I forgot to even include Azeez Al-Shaair in that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, they just win. This defense really is going to be tough for the Tennessee Titans. It's really going to come down to more of coaching and the quarterback, which I know we're not really diving into that, but that's really what this all falls down to. I will say this, that I do think Dalton Schultz is good. Brevin Jordan is okay. Joe Mixon is okay. Dameon Pierce is not good. Now, maybe they use Dameon Pierce in a different way this year, but they seemed very reluctant to use Dameon Pierce last year. I don't know really what the behind-the-scenes reasoning for that is, other than I kept Dameon Pierce in Fantasy League, so they're obviously out to get me personally because I kept him. So, but Joe Mixon, I think, is probably one of the most overrated performers at the running back position. Now, he's like a steady Eddie, but he's not that efficient. He's like one of the worst ranked efficient guys. He did get 4 yards per carry last year, but what he provides them, I think he's a downgrade from Devin Singletary. And I never thought I would say that, but from what we saw last year of Devin Singletary, I think Devin Singletary, going from Devin Singletary to Joe Mixon is a downgrade. But Joe Mixon is dangerous, but he's not dangerous enough that even with the Tennessee Titans linebackers, you're really scared of him. But I think I will give a slight edge to Houston Texans just at this point, because I do think it kind of just comes back to pass catching. And I think Dalton Schultz and Joe Mixon are very good pass catchers that could give these guys really big fits. But I don't think it's that big of a...
No, I don't. They also drafted Kalen Bullock in the 3rd round, I believe, and Cade Stover as well. So they addressed these kind of battles we're talking about here. They did address depth pieces with both of those guys there. I don't know, that's not really a factor here for me, but I think what's interesting, Joe Mixon's only 28 years old, and I believe, if I'm counting, I'm doing some quick math here, he got hurt in 2020, only played 6 games, but he has been over 1,000 yards, over 1,200 yards from scrimmage 5 consecutive seasons, not counting the injury season. So I think I would say he's probably better than what you're giving him credit for, but that he's also, much like Stephon Diggs, we don't know when the decline is coming. And the Texans are making this bet. This is what their bet is, right? They are betting on Stephon Diggs and Joe Mixon, two formerly like high-level players, maintaining some level of production for at least 1 season, if not 2. And so the question is that going to happen or not? And with this quarterback in this system, maybe they do find new life at 28 years old. Maybe the body is catching up with him because Mixon's touched the ball a ton. He's caught a ton of passes and he's had over 250 carries like 6 times. Like he's just how much more tread is left on the tires, as they say.
Yeah, I look at it at Joe Mixon like he's very pedestrian running the ball, but what makes Joe Mixon good is the fact that he can supplement maybe what he can't do in a game on the ground with what he could do in the passing game. It's just I have a hard time buying that he is I would say that the Texans running back room is probably one of the worst in the NFL.
Wow.
And I do think it's probably fourth in this particular division. It's really tough because I really just don't like Joe Mixon from an efficiency standpoint. I look at him and I go, he's just nothing special. And so what does just nothing special translate to in this particular Kyle Shanahan style offense? Does that actually get promoted and he gets better because it's a better offensive scheme?
Yeah.
I don't know. I have a really hard time with Joe Mixon.
Okay,
but I do give them the edge because I do think that I do think we have seen Joe Mixon do well against the players that he's going up against.
Yes. So quickly, Callahan was the OC for 3 years, right? 21, 22, 23 with Cincinnati.
Maybe there is
right?
something there to that too, by the way.
So he was there. 187 targets for Joe Mixon in those 3 years that Callahan was calling the plays. And this is just interesting inside this discussion and outside of this discussion. 187 targets, 154 receptions. So a pretty good catch right there. 1,100 yards receiving, 8 touchdowns. That's just receiving. He had 759 rushing attempts, over 3,000 yards rushing, 29 touchdowns. So extremely productive in 3 years with Callahan, in particular, to your point, over 50 catches a season, 1,100 yards, 8 touchdowns in those 3 years. So that's just interesting information to have as a Titans fan with Callahan as now the coach. But also, I think when you're talking about this matchup, I think because the Texans are so good up the middle with Azeez Al-Shaair, Christian Harris, Petrie, and Jimmy Ward, even if the Titans are pretty good at running back and tight end, they don't probably, quote unquote, win that matchup. And I think because the Titans are lacking depth at safety and at starting positions at linebacker, it's hard to argue that even with all your questions being totally fair, I still think it's hard to pick a win for the Titans because I'm not going to pick them to win. There's not many matchups where I'm going to pick the Titans linebackers. It's just not
right.
There's just not one. And while I like Molden and Hooker a lot, there's not a lot of depth there either. So again, you can see where this is headed. And if you start going quarterback, if you mix in the quarterback in this, everyone's going to go Stroud. So there's a reason this team is picked to win the division is going to be picked by every human being on the planet.
Yeah. I do want to touch on this. Both says Pittsburgh relied much heavier on the pass game, whereas Texans want to run a balanced offense. And that's fine. They're just going to have to take into account that Joe Mixon is going to be very inefficient. Like that's where I struggle with Joe Mixon in this team is like they're obviously going to want to run the ball, but running the ball is not really what Joe is just not very good lately. It just hasn't been that efficient. I mean, we're talking about a guy that only has one 100-yard rushing game last year. I mean, and that was the very final one.
Yeah, the offensive line not great at Cincinnati, but so
I mean, sure.
He's a bulk ball carrier. He needs like 22 carries to get his production, and that you're absolutely correct on the efficiency numbers for sure.
But here's the thing, his rush yards over expected, right? He got 6 more rush yards than what he was expected to get in those situations.
Yeah.
So there is an issue with Joe Mixon. It's not just the offensive line, but there is an issue with Joe Mixon. In fact, I wanted to check something real quick. Run block win rate for the Cincinnati Bengals last year was the 9th best in the league.
Oh, there you go.
So, and the Texans last year had the 25th best run block.
Ooh.
So just want to throw that out there.
Take that, Bo, who says, I think the Texans have a better O-line. Take that, Bo.
Let's look at this real quick. Let's see. Run block. Bengals were 22nd in run block grade according to PFF, but guess what? The Texans were 20th in run block grade in PFF. So
better.
Not even if you depending on how you look at it,
No, I know.
they're not that, they're probably in reality not that far apart when it comes to run blocking for between the Bengals and the Texans. And I think that with Kenyon Green, it may be even worse. But really, that's kind of where you're at.
Okay, this is maybe the most interesting question of the show, and it's not a Texans topic. But Glory Day says, is it concerning that Mixon wasn't efficient and yet they kept trying it in terms of Brian Callahan's play calling? Now, I will go first here because I think we can have a discussion about this. But there was Brian Callahan has talked about Kyle Shanahan, and you and I have talked about Kyle Shanahan running plays that he knows aren't going to work to set up something else. And if Brian Callahan is that good and he is wired that way, and from all accounts, that's what he's been hired to be, then I think when you watch Joe Burrow in the gun run the offense the entire time, basically he's a quarterback who runs the entire offense. They were doing stuff to protect Joe Burrow and to give Joe Burrow the best possible chance to succeed. And even Callahan has admitted that Joe Burrow came to him and said, we got to stop running the football on first down. And they did. They stopped. So just because they're running the ball inefficiently with Joe Mixon a lot doesn't mean that they're not doing it at the right time to create the right thing. We will see if that translates, because I don't think Will Levis has the same skill set that Joe Burrow does. So we'll see.
But also, what's the fix? Right? I mean, you can say, okay, so is it concerning that Mixon wasn't efficient yet they kept trying in terms of Callahan? What were their options?
Well, Jake Browning at one point was the quarterback too, so that's another thing.
Well, but they were 30th in attempts. Only 2 teams ran less than them. So what is the fix?
Chase Brown? You're saying they should have used Chase? Is the debate then?
No, what I'm saying is that how can it be concerning when there is Joe Mixon's what they got? And they ran it the 30. They ran it the 30. They were 30th in rushing attempts. There ain't much there to fix, right? I mean, there ain't much that Brian Callahan can do. It's not like he kept trying. It's not like they were 5th in attempts and kept trying with an inefficient run game. They were 30th in attempts. They avoided the run game. Like, they tried to avoid the run game. They only used them when they needed to, because you got to run at some point. So I just look at it and I go, it's not concerning to me, because what else were they supposed to do? Go somehow 32nd in attempts, which I don't even know who the 32nd team in attempts was, but I mean, it probably wasn't that big of a difference between 456 and for 30th and or 383, which is what they had. You know, it's just they've never been a running team, and I think that's 24th in attempts in 2022. 2021 was 19th in attempts with 436 attempts, which wasn't that many.
So they've gone
17th
down.
17th in attempts in 411 in 2020. 2019, they were 385 attempts, and it's 25th. So, it's just they kind of hover in the bottom third of the league in these attempts, which is what you want to see, right? An inefficient running back. They're low on the attempts. And so, to me, that's exactly what I want to see. It's actually the opposite of concerning. If your run game's not good, I don't want you running a lot.
No, I agree with that point for sure. Maybe it's more about personnel usage. Again, my argument would be, if Mixon's picking up 3.9 yards per attempt, stop giving him 260 attempts. Give Chase Brown the ball a little bit more, which, again, he was a rookie last year, so last year was the only year that they had him. They did have a couple of – they had Samaje Perine there for a couple of years. They
split those very evenly. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't like Joe Mixon was going crazy during those years, having all these, crazy attempts. I mean, let's see. Rushing,
I will say, while you're looking that up, this just popped into my head, so I want to get it out while it hit me, because I was at the game against the Bengals when they did not have, I don't believe Jamar Chase or Joe Mixon played in that game at Nissan Stadium 2 years ago. It wasn't was it last year? I think it was 2 years ago.
When the Titans won?
They didn't have Jamar Chase or Joe Mixon. And
Joe Mixon played that game.
And it was still a really, really – last year Mixon played. 2 years ago, they didn't have, because remember that was the Samaje Perine game where they ran the ball with him like up the middle.
Oh
like,
yeah, that game.
like
Okay.
30 or whatever it was. That just again, this is just a completely random observation. I remember being in that press box thinking, how are the Bengals doing this without Jamar Chase and Joe Mixon? And now and if anything, that is a compliment to Brian Callahan and Zach Taylor.
Yep.
If anything, because I remember, because I think T. Higgins might have caught like a big pass down. Like T. Higgins, I think maybe had a really big day or something like that. But I remember sitting there going, man, they're going up and down the field and they don't have their two best offensive weapons right now. And that, if anything, that's a compliment. So just a weird memory that popped into my head. Just want to put that out there. And I believe that was the year after they lost to him in the playoffs with Tannehill and the three interceptions. So, okay. All right. Sorry, that was random, and appreciate the good questions there. Chef Rand says Bill Callahan is now the run coordinator, right? Yes, that is correct.
I mean,
that is correct.
Yeah, he has not been given the official title, but he is designing and in charge of the run game.
Yep. All right. Is there anything else you want to talk about in terms of the matchup between the Texans and the Titans, special teams?
No, I mean, I think it'll be interesting, the matchup of D'Amico Ryans and Brian Cal. I think the coaching matchup is just as intriguing as the players on the field. I do think that Bobby Slowick is going. I think Denard Wilson will have Bobby Slowick's number, right? Because I mean, we saw what the Ravens did to the Texans. They decimated and destroyed. They gave CJ Stroud fits. So maybe that's something that we can talk on at some point during the summer, is go back and watch that game and talk about what the Ravens did to really put CJ Stroud and company in hell, and if they did enough to fix it on offense. Because that defense had Bobby Slowick looking like an idiot. Like, it was bad.
Yeah, it was bad.
And so Denard Wilson now has the inside track on how to make Bobby Slowick and maybe CJ Stroud bad, but maybe they've done enough with adding Stephon Diggs, Joe Mixon, and stuff. Maybe they've done enough, but maybe they haven't.
The NFL is the that I know that that I know game, and how do you find ways to win that matchup is utterly fascinating. Yeah, we'll do like a rewatchable, and we'll figure out a way to get the stream from like YouTube TV or something in here, and we'll just like rewatch the game and pause it and talk through everything. And that would be a really interesting game to rewatch, because you're right. Like, I think, didn't the Texans go down the field like in the first drive and then they never scored again after that? Like, they were.
I don't remember, because we were at the bar for that game, but we were thoroughly enjoying, because I think that was the weekend we were in Chattanooga, and I think we were at the bar at that game, and we were just having a good old time watching the Texans just get absolutely hammered.
They did, but they're going to be very good this year. So it's going to be, and I'm going to ask you this. I was kind of
like the Chargers. They're really good, and then they make it in the playoffs, and then they get hammered.
Yeah. What's interesting is I know we're going to spend a lot of time this summer saying these things, but, and I said this, what I said on Monday is like how evenly matched the division could be, and how anything that could happen in the division really wouldn't be that surprising. I think the thing I learned coming away from this Texans exercise is that there are reasons the Tennessee Titans are utterly fascinating. There are reasons the Jacksonville Jaguars are utterly fascinating. There's a reason the Texans are extremely interesting. And there's a reason that the Colts are very, very interesting. And I could argue that all four of those reasons are different. Like, it's about the train wreck in Jacksonville. It's about replication and elite nature of the Texans. It's about finding out answers to questions for the Titans. And with the Colts, it's injuries. Like, they're all interesting, but for different reasons. And again, I think this is the most interested I have been in the AFC South objectively as a football fan in a long time. In a long time.
Yeah.
There's no question about that. Okay.
Last year had a lot of intrigue because of all the newness in there and all the young quarterbacks. But this year, it's like there is still some newness, but it's like this could be the start of something special in the AFC South.
It could be really fun for the next 10 years. We'll see. All right. So Sinkers Beverages, obviously the gear. I got the hat on right here. If you're watching on YouTube, they got really good hats, man. They really do. So go get some hats, go get some gear along with all the booze, the beer, the brown water. They got bubbles as well, all the bees there. So go check out all the good stuff they've got. Non-alc stuff as well. Make sure you support them. They've got a lot of great local brands in there as well. A lot of good local breweries that are in there. So go support good local breweries at a local shop like Sinkers. And of course, their sister store, Bluegrass Beverages, up in Hendersonville. Sign up for those absolutely sign up for those awards programs. The in crowd for sinkers, the BOB program for bluegrass. There's going to be some really cool stuff offered to you folks over the course of the next few months. So make sure you sign up there. Follow them on the socials as well. The Kingston Group, buildkg.com. You guys know the drill. You know the deal. I don't have to tell you. You know the name, the Kingston Group already. Just keep it up there in your head. So when you need it, something with your house, make sure you have that name and you should give them a call. And tell them a football show sent you. That's also something we should do. Just tell them that we told you to go. Other than that, Zach, what do you got coming up on stacking, man? What do you got?
Tomorrow's an Elijah Molden propaganda for Film Friday. So all Elijah Molden all the time. Stoney went back and watched the film, and it has a message for all the haters. Elijah Molden's pretty good.
Hell of a tackler. I like how physical he is. That's for sure. Bo says he always gets a Jason Isbell song stuck in his head. I know Jason just announced his 8-night show at the Ryman coming up in October, as one does. Bo, I'd like to know which Jason Isbell song. So if you're still in the comment section, I'd like to know which one you are talking about. There you go. Sinkers needs to add their apparel online to purchase for non-locals. There we go, Glory Day. I like that. We'll pass that information along. Put that stuff online. Sinkers, what are y'all doing? Come on, boys. Other than that, I can't wait for the Elijah Molden propaganda. I've always enjoyed that player since the day he was drafted. So I've always been a fan of his. I like football IQ guys that are physical and where they're supposed to be all the time. Those are guys I like.
And safety seems like a good position for that.
I'm not kidding. I think I said he should be a safety like the first week he was on the team. I think I'll have to go back and check the tape, but I remember us talking. I go like, I don't think he can play outside corner, but I think he could be a really good safety, like a Logan Ryan type of safety. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that does it for us. Football and other efforts stack in the inbox. All the other great shows across the 440 Sports Network. Thank you guys for listening. Thumbs up on the YouTube page and share on Facebook and Twitter. We do appreciate it, as well as on the podcast app as well. So wherever you find us, thank you. We do appreciate you guys listening and supporting us. Have a great weekend, everybody. We will talk to you on Monday. Go Vols.